And we are live here in the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner. Today, I am so excited to have Alicia Bessette with me. She's got an amazing new book, and today is release day for Murder on Mustang Beach. It's the Outer Banks Bookshop Mysteries, Book 2. What a fun series. I love this. I love the new book. Welcome to the show, Alicia.
Hank, thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here and I can't wait to talk to you. So appreciate you.
Excellent. Um, uh, Alicia, a fun question that I like to kick things off with sometimes is, um, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
My first memory, there's kind of two things that happened simultaneously or very close together. So it's going way back when I was 8 years old. And for my birthday, my parents gave me a lined journal, blank journal, and a pen. And I don't really remember having written anything before that point, but my parents must have seen something because they gave me this gift and I took it up to my bedroom and I filled this journal up with stories and poems and diary entries. And, within a few months, it was filled up. So that was one thing. And then shortly thereafter, I think I was probably about 9 years old, my grandparents sold their farm. They had a dairy farm in Connecticut and they sold the property. They decided they wanted to downsize. And this saying goodbye to the land and the farmhouse seemed to resonate very strongly with the adults around me, my father and my aunts and uncles. I didn't quite fully grasp it because I was so very young, but as
Yeah,
a sensitive kid, I knew something was going on. And they had a big family reunion, like one last gathering at the farm. And so I wrote a poem to mark the occasion, and I wrote it in that journal actually. And I brought it to the gathering, and I recited it in front of my family, and everyone, clapped politely. I don't say this to suggest that I was some sort of, prodigy
yeah.
child poet. I'm sure it was pretty basic as far as, poems by 9-year-olds go. But that I had a moment uh, during that time when I mean, I didn't have the vocabulary for it back then.
Right.
That was the moment when I knew, okay, I created something, I shared these words. They seemed to help the people around me make meaning out of something difficult, and it sparked something in me. And I said, I want to do more of this. I want to keep writing and sharing my words with the world. So,
I
yeah.
love that you connected with the spirit of it, even if you hadn't had the chance to collect all the tools yet.
Yes.
But you connected with that thing, that storytelling gene,
Yeah,
whatever it is. We kind of put all these ethereal, qualities on
right.
this gift, this calling, whatever it is, but it's so
It's
fun to
mysterious.
kind of connect to the roots of that.
Yeah, it was, again, I wouldn't have described it this way back then, but looking back, I can see that it was instinctual for sure, and I was lucky enough to tap into it at an early age in an environment that was very supportive. My parents encouraged my writing, and later on, my aunt would lend me all of her Stephen King paperbacks when she was done with them, so,
I
and I
think I
had
had that same aunt that was just,
right,
there's always the one on the outside of the
yeah,
family a little bit, just, handing the Stephen King books to the
right.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I had
I
that same
I was
experience.
lucky. I was lucky to connect with that instinctual, mysterious creation gene early on.
Yeah. I love it. Did I see in your bio that you worked as a journalist for a while?
Correct, yeah.
I
So, right out of college, I worked at a not the college that I went to, but another
Yeah.
college. I worked for the alumni magazine. And then after that, I worked for a weekly newspaper actually in my hometown. So yeah, I have a newspaper background, much like my heroine, Callie Paget in Smile Beach Murder and Murder on Mustang Beach. So
I I've gotten to know a number of writers who also were or are journalists. I don't know if you ever stopped being a journalist
Yeah.
just because you stopped doing that day job. But there's I've always thought that was an interesting um, thing to add to your toolkit because and one way that I like to think about it is especially if you live in a big city where there might be a happening, a newsworthy event that happens, and there might be several members of the media that show up, and they're all reporting on the same set of events, the same happening. But all of their stories will be slightly different because they're all filtered through the eyes of the journalist, the reporter who shows up.
Yeah.
And always thought that was an interesting set of skills to bring to a fiction career, even though we're making up stories. There have to be things that you picked up along the way that help you to see the story a little differently. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's well said. I mean, I'm hardly the first person to point out that journalism is good preparation for fiction, just logistically in terms of, getting used to deadlines,
Right,
getting used to being able to write anywhere. I mean, if you can write in a noisy newsroom and you only have 2 hours until you have to turn in a story,
right.
that translates very well as far as discipline goes when you're getting ready to sit down and write a novel.
It helps you to not hold things as too precious, doesn't it?
Yes, yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say,
Oh,
and, you can't be too precious about it, you gotta bang it out, you just gotta, focus in on every word, make every word count, and just, butt and chair and get it done, so
yeah,
and I do think it's interesting what you were talking about, it's a bunch of people writing about the same event, but every story will be a little different, and I do think there's magic in that. I mean, there are plenty of I keep doing that. There are plenty of mysteries, that take place on the Outer Banks, but they're all a little different because
yeah,
each creator brings their own experiences and their own pasts and their own observations and personalities to the page. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's
Well,
magical.
speaking of background noise and that newsroom, a giant thunderstorm is hitting right now, and it's so
Oh.
noisy. So I apologize if you get some of that bleed over, but
Well, I
this
don't
is
hear anything, but my
okay.
my parents' neighbors apparently just decided to mow their lawn, so if you're getting any of that noise, I apologize for that. You're in Mississippi, is that
I
right?
am, yeah, the deep South in the spring is crazy. We get
Yeah,
it was in the 90s yesterday, and now, thunderstorms rolling through, so,
yeah.
anyway, the, you also are a professional, pianist, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I don't know about professional. I'd say strong
You
amateur.
have a number of recordings out, is
I do. I have
that's fair to
4
say, right?
yes, 4 full-length, albums of original compositions, that I've put out over the last 20 years or so. So every 6 years or so, I decided to put out an album. So
Well, a a lot of writers, have this, uh, kind of ritual where they'll put on a certain playlist, and there's certain music that transports them to whatever mindset it is that we a lot of people will use music to help switch gears, or whatever that mechanism is.
yeah,
But listening to music and writing, is that different than creating music, and do you feel like these are two different um paint brushes in your
right.
toolkit, the one that allows you to create this way as opposed to creating this way?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that generally speaking, I mean, we could talk about this all day, but
Yeah.
in general, I think writing my approach to writing is a lot more intellectual and, a lot more left-brained, if that could be said of me, because I don't really have a left brain. I'm like all right brain. But I'm very organized when I approach my writing. I'm very much in my head. I'm a plotter, so I do a lot of outlining. There's a lot of thinking involved. when I sit down to write music, I don't have, I don't think I could read sheet music anymore. I mean, I could at one point in my life, but I just have a tape recorder, like with an actual cassette tape in there,
Right.
and I just play and record myself. And there's no plan. It's a music for me comes from a much more intuitive, feel my way through kind of place, and I'm not thinking like, okay, I just wrote this, now I'm gonna do it a little differently. It just comes out of me, you know.
Yeah.
I don't really track it in the same way.
I I play at a number of instruments, and I'm definitely a piano hack. But I always have an acoustic guitar here beside me,
Nice.
and sometimes if I'm writing and I'm just kind of stuck, I'll pick up the guitar, and if I'm
Right.
trying to connect with a certain emotion, I may play something in D minor, if I just want to feel sad for a minute,
Yes.
or, maybe a major key if I'm, just feeling like I need to connect with a more soaring emotion for lack of a better word. And that helps me to switch gears. Are you ever thinking about a story and just sit at the piano and just kind of let those
Yes.
emotions come that way?
Oh yeah, music is powerful, and
Yeah,
whether you're playing it or listening to it, um, it can really change your mindset. It can change what you're creating. It
right.
can it can like, usher you into a whole new mood or a whole new way of seeing things. So yeah, if you're the type of person that has a strong relationship or a strong reaction to music, I would recommend using it, going to it and leaning on it and experimenting with it and seeing where it takes you.
It's interesting that music can do something in 3.5 minutes that might take us 80,000 words in prose to elicit the same response.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could argue which one is more satisfying because in 80,000 words, you can take a whole journey. And there's obviously nuance there that you get to do, but it's interesting how the human emotion can play so vividly off different elements.
Sure, and especially with instrumental music too. I mean,
Yeah,
listening to instrumental music or creating it, there aren't any words, and it but yet words can come to you, and,
right.
yeah, I mean, I keep saying this about a lot of different things, but music is mysterious, and, um, yeah, I love it.
I also recently discovered that you live with another writer, Matthew Quick. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
Matthew was on our show about 5 years ago, and we had
Okay.
a, a fantastic conversation. And if any of you are not familiar, Matthew wrote the Silver Linings Playbook and about a half dozen other amazing novels. Wow, that was big thunder.
I heard that.
But yeah, did what is it like to have another person there so close with you? Do you guys ever play off each other? Do you bounce ideas off each other, or are you the kind of couple that has to have your own space and keep things very separate until it's done?
Oh, yeah, when it comes to actually physically, the act of writing, we need to be separated. He needs to be, in his office, door shut, don't talk to him. Whereas I'm all over the house. I never write in my office. I sit on the porch or I sit at the kitchen table and um yeah, so we actually know another married couple who are both writers, and they
Really?
share an office and their desks are touching. And it's like, oh god, that would not work. I don't know how they do it. It
So
works
they're axe murderers. That's what you're saying. They're just
right.
yeah.
Yeah. So and sometimes we talk about, oh, maybe we should write a book together someday. And then we're like, no,
No.
no, it wouldn't work. It would we just have completely different approaches. Like I said, I'm a plotter, he's a pantser, no plan. He just blank screen, blinking cursor goes. He intuits everything. And I don't think I could write like that. But we talk about writing and publishing all the time, all day long. And we are very supportive of each other. He's my first reader. I'm his first reader. So it's uh it's intense, but it's
Whoa,
good.
that's amazing. So, where did your love of cozy mysteries come from? Because, and I'll say this, that I have always loved mysteries, and I've always loved thriller mysteries, and over the last several years, I have come to realize that I'm actually a huge cozy mystery fan, and
Mm.
I I, I don't know what it got. Maybe it comes from, my mother always watching Murder, She Wrote and, some other things like
Little
that, and
bit.
loving Agatha Christie and,
Yeah.
but there's something, I connect very deeply with these type of stories. Doesn't mean I don't like others, but I have a really tender spot in my heart for
Yeah.
this genre. What was it that first intrigued you about this
Yeah.
genre?
So much to say. So I if I recall correctly, my first cozy mystery was, Lillian Jackson Braun, the cat who played Brahms, and I saw the book in a bookshop when I was in on vacation with my family in Ludlow, Vermont, and we went into a store on Main Street called Chapter 14, and there was this book, and it had bloody paw prints on the cover, and it said Brahms, and I was a music dork, and I loved cats, so I begged my mother to buy it for me, and thankfully she did, and that was the first mystery I read, that was the first cozy I read, and I mean, you have psychic cats, like cats solving crimes. What's not to like, you know? And it was
Right.
in this small town, Pickaxe. Were they in Michigan? I think Pickaxe, Michigan.
That sounds right.
Yes, in the Great Lakes somewhere up there. And I just, like you said, I immediately had this affinity and a soft spot in my heart for these types of books, and that led me to discover Agatha Christie when I was in high school, which that is more Agatha is more like the intellectual side. She doesn't get into the emotional lives of her characters as
Right.
much. And so that's where I sort of honed that it satisfied a different part of my, reading appetite, I guess. And, from there, it was, Mary Higgins Clark and Nevada Barr, and then I got into the more thrillery suspense kind of side of things. So, um, cozies, I love cozies because of love, I guess. I mean, these sleuths aren't solving crimes because they're getting paid to solve crimes. They're
Right.
solving crimes because they believe it's the right thing to do, and there's part of them that couldn't live with themselves if they at least didn't try and poke around and get a little social change going on and set wrongs to right. So I find that commendable and uplifting and, I don't know about you, but I'll take all the uplift I can get in
Oh,
this day and age, you know? I mean,
yeah.
the world is so dark and chaotic sometimes, but with cozies, it's like I mean, hopefully it's no spoiler for your audience to say this, but cozies typically have happy for now endings.
Yeah.
So, you go on this exciting adventure with these characters that you really come to know and love. And you know that at the end of the book, there'll be all this danger, risk taking, but in the end, they're going to be okay. The bad guys will get taken out in really satisfying ways. And the characters that you've been rooting for are going to be fine, at least until the next dead body shows up in the next book. So
Yeah.
there's something, not to say that coaches are formulaic, but
Well, every
there's
genre is
form
formulaic.
that sure,
Yeah.
and there's a dependability there that I personally really love about cozies, and they're cozy. I mean,
Right.
who doesn't want
Right.
that?
Well, Happy for Now, or HFN,
Yeah,
and, the other side of that, the Happily Ever After, or HEA, are a lot of they're terms that we use in romance, a lot, but I think you're absolutely right, that it's absolutely appropriate to talk in those types of terms about cozy mysteries. A lot of times there is a romantic element to
Yeah.
cozies, although they're not traditionally romance. And some
Right.
of those nuances are just kind of weird, you know. Some of the genre specific stuff really has more to do with where you shelve it in the bookstore
Sure.
more than what the book is actually about. So, you know, we could quibble about that stuff all day long,
Yeah.
but the happy for now, especially if you're writing a series, they all kind of have to end that way, don't they? You know, we've got a character, we're going to put her through the ringer. We're going
Yeah.
to allow her to, you know, let her big brain shine and, you know, get through trouble,
Right.
and we need things to be okay at the end of this. But if it's a series, we know they're not going to stay that way necessarily.
Yeah.
What are talk about writing a series and thinking about um, you know, how to keep putting your character in jeopardy slash danger, or
Yeah.
plop a dead body in front of them. You
Right.
know, maybe she's not specifically in danger, but these bodies keep stacking up around them. You know, how do you start thinking when you have an established character and an established world and
Right.
established group of characters that you're drawing upon? How do you keep dreaming up ways to um, you know, make their lives miserable?
Right. Well, they need something to do. So,
Right.
every book needs conflict. I received a piece of advice last year from another cozy author by the name of Jen McKinley. She writes romance as well. She's
Yeah.
great. Love her books. And she said to me, you know, keep in mind that there are many life events and you can spread them out over 10 or 15 books. So don't have them like married with kids in book 2. Like spread
Right.
it out. So I'm keeping that in mind. I can't say too much about that because I'm only 2 books deep. Hopefully there will be many more, but you have to start thinking in terms of, you know, when you write a book, you think in terms of character arc through one book. And when you're in a series, you simply expand that to, you know, how do these characters arc over several books and what journey do I want to take them on? So you just kind of widen the lens a little bit and think in terms of life events and, you know, their own life events and how their own pasts will inform their present and inform their future. And yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do. So book 2, Murder on Mustang Beach was a lot, I don't want to say a lot easier, but it was easier in terms of, I had the world already built.
Yeah.
I knew my characters. I knew which ones were gonna show up again, and I knew where I wanted to take them. And so it was just a matter of sitting down and doing it, banging it out for 80,000 words. So
Tell me about the character of Callie Paget. Where did she come from?
I liked the idea of giving Callie some sort of trauma, you know, lowercase t trauma
Yeah.
in her young life. Nothing too intense because it is a cozy, but I
Right.
liked the idea of, you know, this current mystery in her life now, pulling her along and giving her an opportunity to heal some wounds from her past that she never really confronted. So that's what was going through my mind when I sat down to create Callie. She's not me, but you know, we have a lot in common. Journalism background, um, health nut. She drinks a green kale smoothie every day, as do I. She likes to run, as do I. She's turned on by nature and her environment. She's loyal, um, but I think sometimes that loyalty can blind her to people in her life that maybe she can't trust and maybe she shouldn't be trusting. So yeah, she's figuring it out. She's younger than I am, 10 years younger, so she's a little bit, you know, she's approaching 40, and that's a big age for me, and it's a big age for a lot of people. So that's where she is in her life. So I really love Callie.
I love it. What was the idea behind setting it in the Outer Banks?
Well, I've lived on the Outer Banks for 9 years now, and, uh, and I'm originally from Massachusetts, but it's, uh, it's an interesting place. I don't know, have you ever been?
I I've only kind of driven through. I've not
Yeah,
gotten to stay a long time, but yeah,
yeah.
I'm vaguely familiar.
So, for those who aren't aware, the Outer Banks are a skinny strip of barrier islands off the coast
Right.
of North Carolina, and you're surrounded by water. So you've got the Atlantic on one side, and the Sounds and the estuaries on the other. And
We have the same thing in off the coast of Mississippi. We've got a string of
oh,
barrier islands, and
oh, I
yeah.
didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
they're not as big as yours,
Yeah.
but we do have a string of them. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, so when I first moved down there, I observed this attitude and this way of life that was different from what I was used to being a New Englander, but yet relatable. So there's this expression that the old timers say on the Outer Banks. They say it about themselves, and I just think it's so great. They say the nuts roll to the edge. So the edge, of course, is the physical
Love it.
geography of the Outer Banks, and
Right.
the nuts are the people who live there. And when you live on a sandbar, Y you're I mean, the nuts roll to the edge. There's a
Yeah.
certain daring do attitude, and there's a certain, individuality, they're strong of being they're proud of their independence,
Right.
and yet, they understand that in order to survive, you need to stick together. So it's like they're independent there, but they value community and togetherness. And so that is really what I was inspired by the most when I sat down to write this series. I said, I love how beautiful it is there, and I want to capture the natural environment, but I also want to do right by the people and capture that nuts roll to the edge mentality because it's special and it's not like any other place in the world that I've ever been. So
Love it. And that now that you've said that, I'm kind of running through your cast of characters, and I totally understand where that came from. I love it so much. Um, One of my favorite things about mysteries and these types of books, especially, is a sleuth who is a writer or has a bookshop, and
yeah,
there's books about writers or books about books are some of the most inside baseball, and I love it so much. It's one of the most fun things. Um, was it just your history with journalism and your love of books? Is that why you chose this type
yeah.
of world for her, or kind of what was the impetus for that?
The first draft of this book, there was no bookshop. There was no Mother Vine bookshop. Callie was simply a journalist, and that was it. And fortunately, an early reader recommended to me, "Hey, why don't you stick her in a bookshop and see what happens?" And I said, Okay." And I tried it, and as soon as I put the bookshop in there, it seemed to open up this whole new dimension of her personality where I could explore the books that meant something to her in her development as a person. So I mentioned Lillian Jackson Braun, and I mentioned Mary Higgins Clark. Of course, Mary Higgins Clark did not write cozy mysteries. um,
Right.
but I think that Callie finds something in Mary Higgins Clark's heroines that she draws on, a certain strength and independence and um, bravery in the face of, peril
Yeah.
and isolation. And so I didn't initially intend for the series to be a bookshop series, and I didn't intend for it to become, especially Smile Beach Murder, is this real, sort of PN to crime fiction.
Yeah.
That wasn't my initial intention, but I'm really glad that it ended up going in that direction. Readers really seem to enjoy that. They love being in a bookshop. So and so do I. So
Love it. Well, today is release day for you and for Murder on Mustang Beach. And so I know our time here is about up, but if you were pitching this series to a new reader who is not familiar with it at all, what's your sort of elevator pitch to get them to read your books?
Oh, geez, I should rehearse an elevator pitch. I would say, that if you like a faster paced, uh, murder mystery where you're in a small town and there's quirky offbeat characters and you're turning the pages, short chapters, lots of intrigue, then this series is for you. Of course, there's a bookshop cat who is everyone's favorite character is Tin Man, and who may or may not be a little psychic. But it's a fun read. It's a beach read. It's light, but there are serious happenings and big consequences for the people involved. So I hope you will check it out. That would be my elevator pitch.
I love it. We're going to put links to it in the show notes to make it easy for folks to find it. Kindle edition, hardcover, audiobook. Have you gotten to listen to the audiobook yet or hear any of the
Yeah,
sample?
yeah. The narrator, the voice actor is named Carissa Vacker, and she does an absolutely perfect job. I love her voice. So
That's amazing. I read an ARC review copy, and now that it's release day, the audio is available. So I'm going to go grab the audio and get to
awesome.
experience the book all over again like that. Murder on Mustang Beach, available everywhere now. Alicia, if folks are just discovering you, want to dig into all the great stuff that you do and follow along from here out, where's the best place to find you online?
I hang out on Instagram a lot, so it's Alicia Bessette Books. It's also linked to Facebook, same place, Alicia Bessette Books. I'm not on Facebook quite as much, but I would say start there, and my website is aliciabessette.com.
Excellent. We'll link that up as well to make it easy for folks to find you. Alicia,
Great.
thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. Happy release day.
Oh, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, Hank.